Gadget UK here again. Just doing this conversion of this Puzzle Bobble bootleg into Bang Bang Busters. As you can see, I've got Prog 4096B. So I've pretty much completed this now. Actually, you know, there's nothing really much to show you than perhaps the end result. So I need to finish cleaning this up. There's a bit of ice pop still on there, and I've just been cleaning the underneath there where I've soldered the two chips on. But you can see I've got a P1. Then the EP1 slot, and that's where the Puzzle Bobble P1 was. You know, you kind of expect with it being a P1, you'd expect it to be in the P1 slot. Interesting thing with this, I had no end of trouble. I put all the ROM, burnt all, you know, programmed all the EPROMs, put them on both carts, both boards of this cart, and booted it up. The checksum was coming out correct in the Unibars, but the game would crash after the Neo Geo Splash logo, you know, with an exception. Kept caught by the or trapped by the Unibars. So I spent quite a while looking at this board and looking at the jumpers, and you know, because I just assumed that one of these jumpers would be wrong, perhaps for the size of the EPROM that's on there. And originally I'd used a 27C4096 for this, for the program ROM, which I was told was the right chip, and I'm not too sure. Because the checksum was right, but the game would crash. I've taken the chip off there, the 4096. I've not dumped it yet to check it against the original, image that was loaded onto it. But I'm suspecting that a 27C4096 in that position there is not valid. Maybe it's one of these chips that supports 16-bit and 8-bit mode, and I don't know, something somewhere, control signal toggles between the two modes. I honestly don't know. I don't know enough about that. I mean, I didn't even realise you could get chips that could toggle between 8 and 16-bit, but that's all news to me. But so what I end up doing is that the chip that's on here is this chip now. So you can see it's a 27C 4002, and I checked out the tech specs for that, and it's 256K 16-bit, so it's 512 KB it will hold in total. And obviously it's 16-bit, so it's in theory you've got 256K of 16-bit words on there, which is identical to the chip I already had that on there, the 27C4096. That again, that's 256K 16 words, 512 KB. So I don't know, very strange, absolutely mystified by that. But I did do a lot of comparisons to things like World Heroes 2. If you look at on the Cart Scans website, you'll find this same board of 4096B with World Heroes 2, I think it is, on there, and the arrangement, the jumpers are all identical to this. Difference there is that the EP1 slot's not used, but the P1 slot is, even though the jumpers are not changed. And I can't for the life of me understand how these boards are supposed to bloody work. I guess I could spend a lot of time trying to follow the pin outs and stuff, but one of the problems I've got with that approach is I can't find any data sheets for any of these blasted chips. The 27C4002 I can't find a data sheet for. The chips that were in the VROM positions here originally had, I think they were 27C4000Ds, an NEC chip, and I can't for the life of me find anything about those. It's just a bit of a minefield really, but I'm sure if I dig deep enough, spend a bit more time, I'll find something. But as you can see, so on this Prog 4096B board, all I've had to do is, obviously swap out the PROM, and I've used the same chip type, 27C4002. Program that, stuck it in there. I did it, you can see perhaps where I originally had it in the P1 slot, tried that, wouldn't boot. I've since discovered that the chips that are intended to go in the P1 slot are completely different pin out, so that explains why you get a watchdog if you try and stick it in the P1 slot, despite it being a P1 code. I think these are just, used for different types of chips, these different types of different slots. And the V1, obviously I took the V2 off, not needed, it's just a single V chip. And I believe, let me just check that, it's 27C800, I think. Yeah, 27C800. And that seems to be working okay. Now, if you remember when I did the earlier video on this, there's a little bit of, there's 2 tracks joined there. Not sure whether that's going to be needed. It seems to be working fine without it. I'm going to remove it and see if it makes any difference. I know with Puzzle Bobble, if you remove it, the samples went sort of all corrupted and weird. And I just think it's 2 address lines that are joined together there. I don't know, it's whoever originally did this board was trying to trick the thing into, thinking it was only a 512K chip instead of a 1 meg chip or something like that. I don't know, very odd. Quite why you would do that. I honestly don't know. But anyway, so that's that board done. Just like I say, I need to finish cleaning that up a little bit. On the other board, as you can see, still got a little bit, one minor thing to do to this, and that's cover up the EPROMs and remove the C3, C5, C4 and C6 because they're just not used. They're not used on it. I could leave them on, it works fine without it. I tested it, the game works. But there's a couple of EPROMs there that I can reclaim. C3 and C4 are both EPROMs, so that's great. I can reuse those, and there's just no point in leaving these other ones on here. They're just, you know, waste the space, I guess. I will take them off. I'll do that in a minute. And as you can see, I did a dual purpose, as I did. If you want to know how I did this, dual purpose diag / you know, whatever the game is type cart. So you know, you can just change that jumper over, and this will work as the sound diag component to go with the debug BIOS that SNK Dan did. And if you want to see how to do that, just look back at my I think it's cart stuff, and I think it says diag cart or something in the description. That's the video where I described how to do this, and I've done it exactly the same way. I just lifted the pin there, the third pin from the top right, a resistor from the top from VCC into the first pin of the jumper. Obviously you know your EPROM, yeah, I think it's I can't which address line it is now. That address line goes into the middle pin, and then the bottom pin just goes around to the nearest ground. I could have taken the ground from over there or wherever. I guess there might even be a nearer point somewhere around here, but it's okay. I mean, I already had this wire and everything done, so it was easy just to solder it, lift it off, program this chip with two, you know, it's 256K chip. I think Bang Bang Buster's 128K image, the diag image is 128K, so you just merge them together and write that 256K image to that chip. And that's great, and that jumper works fine. I've tested that. So yeah, there's not much more to do with this now. Like I say, remove those four chips off there, clean it up, stick the labels on, yeah, and clean up the solder and stuff underneath once I've finished. It looks okay. There's just loads of flux and stuff all over the place there, and obviously I need to get rid of those other chips, and then I'll show you it running. So as you can see there, remove the 4 C chips. These are all the chips that I've taken off there. Obviously we're one short because they reused the program on, but there's an awful lot of chips, not just off this board, so off the other board as well. So yeah, there's an awful lot. I need to straighten that pin out and there. I can reuse that, that's not a problem. It just needs the solder cleaning off and just bending back into position. That was the one where I had the dual purpose Puzzle Bobble M1 and diag ROM. Anyway, yeah, so quite a few chips I can reuse there. There's just 4 character chips that obviously I can't. So I'll just clean this up now. Clean up these pads, get rid of the flux, and it should be looking good. There we go, all done now. Just give it one more wipe, I think, but as you can see, yeah, the solder's looking pretty good on all those now. I always remove, where I've removed a chip, I always clean up the points there. Just makes it easier to reuse. You know, if I ever decide to convert this into something else, it's far easier than having to start removing 100 million chips and having to, you know, clear all of the solder points and stuff on there again. But yeah, reassemble. Just one final thing here. I just to take this apart again. There was a jumper needed changing. I don't know. You can see. Am I looking at the right place? I'm looking on chip. Here we go. See if I can get that to focus. Yeah, J5 was previously joined. I've moved that jumper to J6. And incidentally, that little blob, you know, I mentioned that on the Puzzle Bobble where it's joining the 2 tracks. That is still required. But yeah, if you don't do that, if you don't do the jumper, it sounds fine, and you can go into the jukebox, play all the musical tracks, and it sounds fine up until you get to about 7 or 7/7 or something, 7/7 something H, and then as soon as you start getting to some of the samples there, you get crackles and squeaks and stuff and pops, intermingled with sort of, you know, some decent sounds and things on some of the addresses there. But yeah, and I think that all this does is set this so that it'll, you know, work with 4 megabits ROMs or whatever. You know, that's what usually typically what these jumpers are used for here. It may be a case that I need to move 8 across as well. I'm not really sure. It might be that one relates to each of the positions on there. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know how that works. But the position it's in now, set like that, that's perfect. It's working fine. This is flawless. So anyway, I'm glad I spotted that. It would be easy to miss that on reflection, because the majority of the sounds were okay. It's just only when you play a few levels in, you start to get a few odd, you know, just little really small crackles, and you think, what was that? Was that, you know, is that noise on the TV, noise on the line? You know, what is it? And it is the samples that are not playing right because you know about jumper. set properly. But yeah, anyway, glad I did that. So I'll just relabel this and get it back in its box again, in its case rather. There you go, that's the final job. Label on there. Obviously the serial number is a fake serial number. I just put down the month and year there, just as a reminder myself really when I did it. Right, I'll power this up and let's show you some of the gameplay. Right, so as usual I'll put it in console mode. Okay. I'll just play through this, see how far I get. I did have a quick go at lunch, but didn't do very well. I think I got past the first boss, and right, it's gone normal. So you've got two characters. Let's go with the girl. I'll just leave this going so you can see the controls and things. Just turn it up a little bit. Sorry, I apologise for the rain. It's making it like that. Right, okay, let's start it. Now, when I originally did this, before I did that jump that I just showed, some of the samples weren't working. I don't think you got that rumbling in the ship in the background there, and just some of these sort of boss noises and things that are made weren't happening. So you've got to hit them, catch them, and then obviously you can swing them around like that. And try and lob them in the right direction. It's pretty hard to be fair. I'll probably get better at it, but it's not the easiest thing. Or you can just like, I think you can lob them like that. I mean, initially, I'm quite pleased with it. It's pretty good. Don't know how many rounds there are. It seems relatively large game from what I can see. Music gets a little bit repetitive for a while, I have to admit, because it's pretty basic, but at the end of the day this was a prototype, it was unreleased. Don't know how far it was off them considering releasing it, although it was just shelved. It came out, I think it was Tubes quite around the same time as Papa. I don't know if that's something to do with it. Well, that's why they decided to count it. Right, yes, this is one of these. You get these little mid-boss things where you've got to hit those and they spawn other enemies and things. I think there's a time limit as well. I think if you don't complete the round quick enough, you get like a UFO or something comes on and will basically kick your ass if you don't deal with it. Oh god. Oh, here we go, UFOs coming on. I was lucky. Pretty early round, so it's not that hard to kill those little mid-boss type things. So the ROMs are used for this then, or the EPROMs I should say, the chips. For the VROM, I believe I've used the 27C800. The character ROMs are 27C16. Is it 160? It's the next one up from an 800 to 2 megabyte. I'm not playing very well here, I'm thinking about what ROMs are on it. Yeah, so for the S, I think the S1 was 27C1000, the M1, in my case I've used the 27C020, which is 256-bit, it's 256K chip, and that's just because I've got, this is a dual diag game card. But if you just want to just do a straight conversion, you just need a 27C 010, which is 128K, because that's how big the M1 image is. What's left? P1. Now the P1 is interesting. I mentioned in this video already. I had problems with the 27C 4096, which people were telling me I needed. That gave me a checksum. One of the first things I did, the approach to this actually, was to swap the P chip, P1, and then boot that up. And then you wouldn't be able to see the game, it wouldn't sound right, you get loads of crap and garbage sound coming out of it, and you wouldn't be able to see anything. But the theory with that is to check the unibias to make sure that I had a good checksum, and that all works, so that gave me a good level of confidence that everything will be okay. I might just get some sort of problems with graphics and sound where I might need to do either change the jumpers or do some chunk swaps. And if you're not familiar with the chunk swaps, there are one or two of the carts, I forget which ones they are, where you need to do what's called a chunk swap. And what a chunk swap is, if you've got, say, for example, on the character images, you've got 2 meg chips, you might find that you need to do like a 1 meg chunk swap where, say, C1 contains the first half, or the first chip rather, goes on C1, puts into the first half of the C1 image, and the second half of the C1 image goes into the C2 chip, and then the first half of the C2 chip goes into the second half of the first C1 chip, and the remainder into the second half of the second chip, if you see what I mean. That's sometimes the sort of thing you've got to do. I'm glad I didn't have that, because that can be a bit of a nightmare. If you've not done it before, you don't really know what to do with it. It can be a bit of trial and error trying to work out what goes where. And it's the same sort of thing with the jumpers, really. I had that problem with the sound, where it sounded okay. I was listening in the jukebox to some of the soundtracks and stuff, and they sounded okay, and the game sounded okay. But there was just a few samples. You see, when you hit in there, or just before he fires, he makes a sort of weird. See if I can get to do it. Sound. This is like Saki or something like that. Yeah, it wasn't doing that. That sample was missing. It was like a click. It was like a really high pitched click, and I was like, that sounds like a corrupted sample. So it's a bit of trial and error there, and sometimes you might get the trial and error depending on what you're trying to convert, what game it is, and all the rest of it. And incidentally, not every cart will support every game. It's one of those that. It depends on the size of the game, in particular the era it came from, because typically it will be a certain size for a certain point in time. Some of the earlier, very early games didn't use very much in the way of megabits, and for those carts you really need to use one of those original boards, that don't hold very much programming and character code. But boards like this, sort of around, I don't know, 94 onwards, I guess, to 94 to about, 98. Before they brought protection and stuff in, then you can get away with using the majority of boards of that era. So, like, I think in my case I've used a Prog 4096B, and I think the graphics board is a Sharp something G1. I forget the exact code, but if you want to know, if you want to see the board, just have a look at World Heroes, World Heroes 2 on cart scans. You'll see the exact couple of boards that I've got, and I used that as a reference point when I was having problems with the program ROM and I was looking at the video jumpers and the jumps of the VROMs and stuff. So it's useful to do that sometimes. If you can find, if you're not too sure about the jumpers, take a look at some of the other carts that are on that website, MVS Scans. Try and find one that's using the same boards that you're using. Also cross-compare, as I did, to the size of the ROM images that are on that other card, to see where similarities are and what the differences might be. And that can shed a light on the jumpers, because you could be looking at and go, okay, well, that jumper's different than that, the board. The sample board I'm looking at on that website's got 4 meg char ROMs, and mine's only got 2. And it could just give you a bit of an insight on what jumper might need changing to accommodate the types of chips you're putting on whatever SAT cart you've chosen. And it's not rocket science at the end of the day, and I'm sure there's going to be exceptions to the rule where some stuff's really difficult to do and some stuff's like really easy. And I think this one, it's an easy game to do, I think, if you get the right carts, and I think this is probably, from what I've read, the easiest cart you could do it on, because there's just no chunk swaps or anything like that. It's really straightforward. And the other thing I would say about that is these Prog 4096B boards are pretty common. You know, I mentioned a few times that my book Puzzle Bobble's a bootleg. I've come to the conclusion, yes, it's a boot, but the cart is not actually a boot. The cart is a legit SNK board, and I suspect its origins were Power Spikes 2 cart. Power Spikes 2, I don't really played it. It's pretty crap as far as I can see. I still want a copy at some point, but it didn't do very well. It's a pretty bland game. I wouldn't be surprised if excess stock were bought up by some sort of entrepreneurial bootlegger and decided to convert them into other games, Puzzle Bobble, etc. It might have even been a legit upgrade option. I honestly don't know how that worked back then. Whether you could have a potential upgrade one game to another, whether it's frowned upon and you could only ever buy complete carts. Honestly, don't know. But what I do know is the car. I'm 100% sure it's an original car, and I've got one or two of these now. That look the same. I forget, but I think that Super Sidekicks is the same board again, which makes me think, yeah, that's a bootleg. It's not original. It's being converted, but I'm pretty sure it's an SNK board. I mean, the other thing that makes me think that some of these aren't bootlegs, and someone could have been mistaken on that MVS card scan site, especially with regards to one of the Puzzle Bobble images that's there, the one I've got. The photo, it's just like my board. And it shows pretty much, it's all original mask ROMs except for a couple of EEPROMs on there, and that's led someone to believe that it's a bootleg. And I'm just not so sure. I'm not so sure it's been converted, because there are a lot of mask ROMs on there. And they've got all the proper Toshiba part numbers and stuff on there. So I don't know. It's a bit of a grey area, really. I don't think anybody could perhaps be 100%, sure of exactly what you've got, unless there's some bootlegs that are obvious bootlegs. Anyway, as you can see, it works, sounds fine, graphics are fine. I hope that's been interesting. If you have any questions or anything, give us a shout. Please leave a thumbs up or some comments or something. And if you get... Sorry, the power ran out then, just as I was about to finish that. If you want any advice, please give us a shout. I'm not an expert at this, I got stuck on this one myself doing this conversion. But I'm always, sort of more than willing to help anybody or offer advice where I can. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.